Paris, 1792. The bells screamed through the mist, echoing over rooftops and down narrow streets. At the Tuileries Palace, the royal family awoke to warning drums and distant gunfire. Outside, tens of thousands, guardsmen, armed citizens, former subjects, gathered to storm the palace. Inside, panic spread. Servants fled. Windows were barricaded. Marie Antoinette, once the glittering Queen of France, stood pale beside her children, listening to the mob that once adored her, waiting for the monarchy to fall. If you're into dark history and stories of power undone, hit subscribe. You'll want more of this. The fall of the Tuileries was the moment Marie Antoinette stopped being a queen and became a symbol of hatred, betrayal, and everything the revolution sought to destroy. After the royal family's failed flight to Varennes in June 1791, whatever sympathy the people once held for them evaporated. The escape had revealed what many already suspected. The king and queen were not captives of the revolution. They were its enemies. From then on, every rumor, every shortage, every act of royal hesitation was blamed on her. Pamphlets flooded Paris, mocking the foreign-born queen as Madame Deficit, the Austrian who bled France dry. By the summer of 1792, tension ignited into fury. As armed crowds surrounded the Tuileries, the king's Swiss guards stood ready to defend him, loyal, disciplined, and outnumbered. But Louis XVI, paralyzed by fear, refused to give the order to fire. Instead, he led his family through the palace gardens to seek protection from the Legislative Assembly. Moments later, chaos erupted. The palace was stormed, the guards slaughtered, the royal insignia torn down. That same day, the monarchy was suspended. Under armed escort, the royal family was taken to the Temple, an ancient fortress in the heart of Paris. Behind its cold stone walls, Marie Antoinette's world of silks and ceremony ended forever. In the early hours of August 2nd, 1793, footsteps echoed through the corridors of the Temple prison. The door to Marie Antoinette's room opened, and officials of the Paris Commune entered with a single message. She was to be transferred immediately. Before dawn, she was escorted across the Seine to the Conciergerie, the grim stone fortress on the Ile de la Cité known among prisoners as the antechamber of the guillotine. From that moment, she was completely severed from her surviving family. Her daughter, Madame Royale, later wrote that her mother embraced her in silence, aware that even whispers were overheard. At the Conciergerie, the Queen was no longer Her Majesty. The prison registry recorded her simply as the Widow Capet. Her cell, barely 3 meters long, stood above the river, damp, dark, and cold. Eyewitnesses described walls slick with moisture, floors crawling with vermin, and air so foul it turned the stomach. She was given only straw to sleep on, and 2 guards were ordered to remain in her cell at all times, even as she changed or washed. A prison doctor's notes reveal a body wasting away, uterine hemorrhaging, weight loss, exhaustion. By September, her hair had turned completely white. Still, she carried herself with the faint, practiced grace of a queen. Her last private act of defiance came in a note smuggled toward her sister-in-law, Madame Elisabeth. It was never delivered. In it, she wrote simply, "I have nothing left to hope for in this world." At dawn on October 14th, 1793, the doors of the Conciergerie opened once more. Marie Antoinette, pale, thin, and dressed in black, was led through the prison corridors into the main hall of the Revolutionary Tribunal. Her trial had begun. The charges read aloud went far beyond treason. She was accused of plotting with foreign powers, financing counter-revolutionary conspiracies, and, most grotesquely, of incest with her own son, the young Dauphin Louis Charles. This final accusation, extracted from the terrified boy during imprisonment, shocked even some revolutionaries. But the tribunal had not assembled to weigh truth. It had gathered to destroy a symbol. The courtroom was suffocating. Armed guards lined the walls, while selected citizens, hand-picked Jacobin supporters, filled the benches. At the center sat Fouquier-Tinville, the Republic's merciless prosecutor, famed for his efficiency in sending prisoners to the scaffold. The atmosphere was not judicial but theatrical, a performance of vengeance disguised as justice. Eyewitnesses described Marie Antoinette's composure as extraordinary. Her cheeks were hollow, her eyes sunken, yet she stood upright, her voice steady. When questioned about secret letters and supposed plots, she denied all involvement. But when confronted with the incest accusation, she hesitated only once. Her reply, recorded in the official minutes, was brief and devastating. "I appeal to all mothers." The courtroom fell silent. Even her enemies, for a fleeting moment, could not meet her eyes. No witnesses were called in her defense. No evidence was examined. After 2 days of staged testimony and slander, the verdict was inevitable. At 4 a.m. on October 16th, the jury pronounced her guilty. The sentence: death by guillotine. She showed no visible reaction. At dawn on October 16th, 1793, Marie Antoinette was awakened in her small cell at the Conciergerie. The guards informed her calmly her execution would take place within hours. She dressed without assistance in a plain white chemise, the color of mourning for queens of France, and tied her hair back as best she could. Unlike her husband, Louis XVI, who had been taken to his death in a closed carriage, Marie Antoinette was denied that final dignity. Her hands were bound tightly behind her back, and she was placed in an open wooden cart, the same used for common criminals. The procession wound slowly through the streets of Paris, lined with tens of thousands of onlookers. Witnesses reported silence at first, then jeers, curses, and songs of revolution. Yet throughout the journey, the former queen sat upright, her face pale but serene, her gaze fixed ahead. As the cart rolled past the Rue Saint-Honoré, one observer, the radical Jacques Roux, noted, "She appeared calm, like a woman beyond fear. At the Place de la Révolution, the guillotine towered against the grey sky. Her white hair had been cut short by the executioner's assistant, as custom demanded. When she accidentally stepped on the executioner Henri Sanson's foot while ascending the scaffold, she turned to him and said her final words. 'Pardon me, sir. I did not do it on purpose.' Moments later, at 12:15 p.m., the blade fell. A single cry of 'Vive la République!' rose from the crowd, followed by a chilling hush. The Queen of France was gone. Her body was placed in a common coffin and buried in an unmarked grave at the Madeleine Cemetery, among hundreds of others executed during the Terror. Her fall marked the end of a world, the collapse of monarchy, ceremony, and divine right. In her final letter, written hours before her execution, she left words of forgiveness. 'I forgive all my enemies. I die in the hope that my death will unite my children.' Marie Antoinette's death ended an era, her crown lost, her name immortal.